making a film, for me, a film is just a set of decisions at every stage, from pre-production to the on set to the edit. You're just making decisions this way or that way, that take or this take, you know, red or blue.
So it is a very interesting process to kind of dip into different styles and almost speak different visual languages. I find it very, very exciting.
There's going to be a lot of times where you'll always be the underdog, I think, in that pitch process, for example, or getting to that pitch process.
Don't think that your creativity stops in your ideas. Your creativity is about how you get the next ideas made. It's how you manage to pay your bills, become a professional. Like, you have to be creative.
In the early stages, it's like massively creative. You're like constantly trying to invent yourself, reinvent yourself.
When I started directing music videos, I couldn't live off that money. I had to have another job. Like, that's just the reality of it.
Welcome to London College of Communications Value Talks, a series where we bring together figures from across different industries to talk about contemporary issues and creativity. Today we'll discuss the successes and challenges of carving your own lane in the film and content industries. So Tash, take it away. Who are you? What do you do?
My name is Tash Tung, and I'm a director. I work a lot in short form, so commercials, fashion films, music videos, and hopefully it's going to start a narrative soon.
Nice.
Yeah.
What about you?
Hey, I'm Natalja Safranova, and I am a DOP, director of photography, and I work mainly in short form as well, commercials, branded content, music videos. I also do documentaries, and I shot my first series for Channel 4 last year.
Nice.
Amazing. My name is Samona Olanipekun. I'm a writer-director. Do a lot of everything in terms of doc, commercials, and narrative is the passion, and that's the goals. And
Nice. Nice. And today we're going to be talking about filmmaking and how to make that your career. So I'd like to just know, first of all, your stories of how you got here today. So who wants to take it away? Sam, I'll come back to you.
Yeah, I'll go. Good question. I think for me, early 20s, I was running around with friends with the cameras, and, you know, we got paid to do, I would shoot little short films, just for the jokes, learning as we go. Editing, shooting, a lot of them were terrible, but someone paid us £200 to do something, then 500, then 1,000, and then, you know, and it just grew very, very naturally. And I think I always say I was making kind of branded content before it had a name.
Yeah.
Branded content, so we were just doing stuff for people, or for friends and for brands, and then, within that I was editing, I was shooting. The first proper role for my profession was producing, and then I've been directing for maybe 3 or 4 years now.
I guess there always were cameras around when I was growing up. With my dad. Later I found out my grandmother also wanted to be a DOP, so in the 50s she applied to film school, but she didn't get in. Although I did not know about that up until quite recently. Yeah, so I studied film here at LTC, and later I went to NFTS as well, but I've been working freelance, sort of doing literally bits and bobs, much like yourself, doing photography, videography, editing, like in the early days. Literally, anything related to film, I would pick it up and do it to make money, get some experience, and try and figure out how to make this my career. And I think probably about 3-4 years ago, it finally all lined up, and I can say that I'm actually a filmmaker.
What about you, Tash?
I think I came to film quite late. I sort of studied here, I studied graphic design, hated it, and knew I wanted to work in moving image. I just thought it would be like artist moving image. When I left uni, I started working at cinemas and watched loads and loads of films. I worked in Leicester Square, so, you know, the big Odeon there where they do like the film premieres. And when you work in the cinema there, you get to go to all the other cinemas around for free. So I would just watch films all day, every day, like before work, during work, and then after work. And I got a job as a runner in a production company, a commercial production company, and I started doing the director's treatments there. I think because of my like very current film knowledge, it really helped me you know, with references for commercials. That kind of thing comes up so much. They always reference films and stuff that's like contemporary and trendy. You'll notice like a lot of commercials that kind of copy what's been out in the films. And that was really helpful for me to get like started in industry and like learn about all the different jobs there. I just didn't know that what the roles were and things like that. And then a couple of years later, I decided to like make a music video for a friend of mine, and we had like 300 quid, and there was like 5 crew, and I was like focus pulling and producing and directing, of course, that kind of thing, that normal hustle. And then after that, I got repped as a director. So it was very quick, but I think there was a lot of prep before that in terms of like working in production and being on set and like learning through that.
Nice. And can I ask, considering you all had different ways into getting into film, how did you find what you want? How did you identify what you wanted to say with cinema? Or did that? Or are you still identifying?
Yeah, I think it's an ongoing process. There's definitely themes that come out in my work that other people tell me as well, as like things that I gravitate towards or stories I want to tell. But I would say my work in terms of like who I work with and what I make is really broad. But within that, it's like tied together like by my own viewpoint, I suppose. I think that's
massively, yeah. I think exactly as Tash was saying, there's the voice and then style, which kind of are similar things, and people often ask, where does it come from? And I've got no clue. I don't, it just is what it is. And so for me, I'm interested in what I'm interested in, and I gravitate towards that. And that's, it's constantly, I guess, instinctual. So, when I'm making a film, for me, a film is just a set of decisions at every stage, from pre-production to the on set to the edit. You're just making decisions this way or that way, that take or this take, red or blue, this so for that so. And so I think those decisions are obviously informed by who I am and my background and my sensibility and all of those things. And so, yeah, exactly as Tash said, other people and friends of mine say, yeah, I can see your style, I can see it. I'm like, yes, but not really.
Yeah. Sometimes it's intuitive, the decisions you make, and obviously sometimes you're very conscious about why you are choosing that blue or red, or what those things mean and what they're telling in the story. And then a lot of the decisions, like suddenly on set, when it's crunch time and you have to make a call really quickly, and that's, I think, a lot of it's intuitive. Or like if you're in an edit, you can tell when something doesn't feel right.
Exactly. And you might not be able to articulate it, but you just like that one.
Yeah.
And that's, what people pay us for. But I think I'm still definitely trying to find my voice and style. And like, I see it as one day I'll look back and be like, oh, okay.
It makes sense.
Yeah, I can see a thread, but I don't go into things with that consciously in my mind, really.
What about you, Nat? Because as a DOP, you're obviously more time taking direction from a director, but obviously still they're trusting in you to fulfill their vision, and they want to see your vision. So how do you combine both to...
it's a little bit different, because ultimately we are sort of hired for our style, but then we are given a brief of something completely different.
We like you, but do this.
So which is great, because I really would hate to be shooting the same thing visually. I mean, it could be different stories, but I would hate to shoot thing that looks exactly the same. So it is a very interesting process to kind of dip into different styles and almost speak different visual languages. I find it very, very exciting. So it really challenges me, and I get really bored if I have to do the same thing over and over again. After 2 times, I'm like, okay, this is not challenging anymore. Like, I've done this before. So yeah, but regarding finding my own voice, I mean, I think a lot of it is still unconscious. There are probably certain things I enjoy and things that speak to me, certain stories. But I think, I guess the best way to put it would be like, it's actually really interesting to speak in different visual styles and visual languages. I mean, we'll see how it shapes up, but I would not want to be that person who gets hired to shoot exactly the same thing over and over.
Do you see a style, like across, obviously you work with loads of different people and different projects, do you see your like signature, or do people say that they see?
Well, my big thing is color, which is, I I mean, a lot of people say that, but I sort of embody that in my life usually as well. Like, I'm a very, very colourful person.
I like your shoes. I've noticed.
Thanks. Yeah.
You can't see them on camera, but they're fire.
Yeah, maybe my top is not very colourful. But yeah, it's colour, like, and like being spontaneous and stuff like that. So it's always to do with colour. Like, I'll always try and sneak in things. So like, if someone offers me a project which is kind of very bland and very white walls, then I'm really not the best person to tell that story, like a social realist story. That's just not really my thing. Because I struggle to, or like, if we tell it differently, a social realist story, but the visual world is different, then, you know, that could still be me. But if they want this world which is very, very, you know, pale,
naturalistic.
Naturalistic. I'm probably not the right person to tell that story because that's not how I see the world.
Yeah. And just to pick up on that point, how do you, for example, if someone comes to you, Tash, or you, Sam, with a project, then how do you have that understanding to be like, I'm not the person to tell this story? Or when do you know when to try and bend the story to your way, or do you sometimes have to alleviate yourself of a story? Because I think that's a part of filmmaking in itself, because you don't want to be the filmmaker that just does everything. But at the same time, when do you know when something's a challenge, and when do you know that's just not me?
It's a good question.
I mean, I think an easy example maybe is like music video briefs. I don't know if you feel the same, Sam. Like, sometimes you'll get a song and or brief that is just, you try really hard and you just don't connect with it. Like, it could be that the song is just not your song, and it's so important because in music videos, because you of course write to like emphasize and like lift the song, and you have to listen to it like hundreds of times. And if you don't connect with it, then it's just sometimes really obvious. Like, I just won't be able to write an idea, or maybe the brief itself, the song's great, but like they want something very specific, and that style is just really not you. You can pitch like off brief as well, and sometimes like if you're like the wild card, they might really like that idea. Suddenly you might open up their eyes to something they didn't expect. But yeah, I think that's a good example for me of when I kind of will take a step back and say,
I think, yeah, like comes for me, it's with over time and building that confidence of my own sensibilities, my own tastes, and, you know, my route into doing what I'm doing. I've had to do a bit of everything, and I think that has been so valuable because I've just thrown myself in all sorts. I've shot weddings, I've shot brand stuff, I've shot, you know, documentaries, I've shot things which I might look back and think, you know, I'd never do that again. But at the time I said, yeah, that sounds good. Like, if there's a story there and I can see something in it, then I'll do it. But I think once you do something once and you start to gauge, okay, the brand or the commissioner, whoever it is, aligns with me or aligns with my tastes, and, you know, I'm quite, especially over the last few years, comfortable in the fact that, you know, my work isn't for everyone, and that's okay. And I think it's good to not have work that's, if everyone likes your work, then you're probably doing something wrong.
That's actually a really good point. I would say, like, when I started, I also just did everything, because I got signed after doing one music video. I didn't know how to direct, essentially. I was just like, oh wow, okay, I'm starting to like pitch on jobs now. And the pitching part was all right because I'd learnt that by working in-house, doing director's treatments, right? But the actual directing part, and like sort of getting to the point where now I feel like I'm not 100% sure to describe exactly what my style voice is, but I know for sure like the direction I'm going in. Whereas back then, I just wanted to try and learn as much as possible, be on set as much as possible, direct as much as possible, and I pitched on everything because the process was a learning process for me. So for sure, like, I completely agree with you there.
Just, you know, saying no is such a nice, or it's quite empowering, and people respect it.
Yeah, I think
100%.
so.
Yeah.
And obviously, it's a privilege to be able to say no, because, you know, there is a time where you are doing everything, and I would massively advise people to do everything.
Yeah.
You know, that's not something I would say, like, if you could be a young filmmaker and know exactly what you want, great, fair, you know, but I think, like me and Tash are saying, you just have to do it to then learn, and then actually say, you know what, I've tried all these things and I know where my talents lie, where my tastes lie, where, you know. And so, yeah, it's kind of, so, yeah, I think you just start to know what kind of projects you're about, and that you can contribute to, connect with.
100%. And I guess, I mean, it loads on perfectly to my next question of, is that the way you would say you should build up your portfolio of work? Like doing everything, trying, experimenting, or?
I would say your portfolio is is putting your best foot forward, right? So even if you do try everything, I wouldn't put it all forward. Because gosh, I have so many videos which are just not out in the world.
For a reason.
What about the early stages though?
Yeah.
The early stage of the
and also
career.
how to build connections, because by doing different things, right, and doing everything, shooting weddings, shooting documentaries, shooting off-branded content that's not really branded, like, I guess you'd have met so many good people on the way, so many bad people. That's also what you need on set, what works for you on set, the type of characters you probably personally need. So did it, I guess the question I'm asking is maybe, did it help you build your portfolio? Of course, but did it also just help you build your connections, build your tribe, if you will?
I think one of the best pieces of advice I had very early on, and it wasn't even to do with this exact context, but someone pulled me aside and said, it's so easy to get pigeonholed in this industry. And the guy who was telling it was talking to me about it, I must have been 18, 19, and I was running on this big set, and my knowledge then was like, to get into film, you run and then you become a AD and then you become a director, because that almost makes sense on paper. And fortunately enough, he pulled me aside being like, no, like do what you want to do. And because if you get really good at being an AD, no one's going to hire you to direct because you're a good AD. And so I was like, okay, wow. And I took that and I apply that to everything now. So I know that I can shoot, I don't know, sports commercials, or I can shoot music videos, or I can, but then at every stage I'm always asking myself, what do I want to do? And does this piece of work give any indication or give any hint to that? So yeah, early on, anything that I'd done, I would show if it meant getting more work. I was always conscious that I didn't want to get pigeonholed into just doing music videos or just doing these specific commercials or so I think the portfolio is so important for two reasons. One, to actually demonstrate you can deliver, and that can mean in whatever, but also it demonstrates who you are as a filmmaker. And so, as Tash was saying, there's so much stuff I've shot which won't see the light of day. There's some stuff I've shot which will see the light of day, but I'll only send it when I know it needs to be sent. And then the stuff that's on my Vimeo is the things that I know that say something about me and that I'm most proud of. Who knows, this time next year it may look very different in terms of it's constantly changing and evolving to show what I want to, the direction I want to go and what I want people to take away from me and my, I guess, body of work.
What about you?
Yeah, I think the website, your portfolio, is very important that it represents who you are and actually what you want to be doing. Rather than having literally everything on there. It should really show this is me and give a little bit of an idea of what kind of things you can do. But yeah, ultimately it needs to be the work you want to be doing rather than don't put any work there that you don't want to be doing. Unless you're in the very early stages of your career. Like in the very beginning, sure, jump onto any opportunity, do ADing, do running, do producing, anything. Because I also did literally everything. I was also shooting weddings. I was doing interior photography, event videography, event photography. I went through it all. Despite going to uni, I still had to do the whole journey of doing literally every single job within film out there.
I think that's what's really nice about doing a lot of different roles maybe when you start, is that you start to understand what those people do when you're not doing that role. For example, for me as a director, starting and having to produce obviously your own stuff at the very beginning, I'm so thankful for my producers now because I really value what they do and what they bring and how they let me then focus on the creative, because it's all so important. And also I guess it can help you decide how you want to operate as well, as you said, how you want to work and who you want to work with. And I used to edit my own stuff, and I'm so glad I have an editor. But it helps you vocalize what you want, and have like creative collaborations because you understand it a little bit,
Yeah, definitely agree. Even in my own personal practices, just the bits I've done, just rogue, off the cuff, learn. Just being like, for example, working with an editor. I've just started working with an editor, and I edited all my stuff. And first of all, thank you to my editor. But second of all, the fact I've edited knows means I can communicate to him in a way that means he can understand what I'm saying, but also I know what it's like to edit. So I'm not going to now say, oh, make it spin. He's like, how do I? You didn't do that. I can't do that now, So it's just like, it's good to, definitely do everything. And I guess now I just wanted to pick up on a point you were saying, sorry. It's like platforms. Now, what are the best platforms to present your work for you guys personally? And also, because you were saying, obviously, you should only present really what you feel is yours. Is it a good idea sometimes to just be like, if it's 2 projects that you feel like this is me, is it better to go with that, or is it sometimes you need to have a bit more just to show range?
I think 2 projects is not really enough if you've done more. So it's better to show a bit more.
Saying that like in relation to something like Instagram, is that why you're saying?
Yeah, I think I'm talking in relation to Instagram. I think Instagram is also important, so don't check my one because it's not the best. So yeah, I put more work into my website, although I should probably balance it out a bit more. But yeah, I think those 2, I mean, the younger generation is probably doing TikTok, but I'm not going to talk much about that because
Does anyone do that for work, TikTok?
I bet some people do.
Platform.
My gaffer does. She posts BTS.
Wow. That's
what puts BTS on there?
Yeah.
Yeah, see,
so you can find me on TikTok,
yeah.
but like, I don't know how to find myself on TikTok.
I think TikTok's great. Like, for example, if you have someone, I know this sounds mad, not everyone's gonna have that person, but if you have like a friend that can shoot everything and just clip it, like shoot a load of rogue videos of the day and then clip it together with a nice song, I think that's perfect for a TikTok.
Yeah.
But I think posting the actual edit and in a TikTok format, I just don't think it sits, because from what I see on TikTok anyway, it's much more like you're just there to see like animal funny dance, mad quote, mad interview, back to it's just a cycle of that. And
it's a difference.
It's probably going to change though.
Yeah.
With Instagram going down and TikTok going up, we may have to find ways
to
be on TikTok. I don't know.
Yeah, it scares me. But it's hard. I'm terrible naturally with my PR, let's call it, across the board, whether it's website, Vimeo, Instagram. Some people are great at it, and you can see it's 100% beneficial. There's no doubt about that. But I think for me, I just try to say, I think early stage career, you have to present your work in a good way. So you'd be stupid not to utilize them all, or try to utilize them all, and be open to finding work through any of them. But yeah, I really try to just focus on the work these days, as cliche as it sounds. It's just like you can get so bogged down in, there's a lot of noise I find on it. I guess this is more towards social media as opposed to website, but websites are constantly always trying to be updated. You update it and literally you blink and it's old already, or there's something's already changed, and hence the reason I'm just like, this is just too stressful, and let me just focus on the work and put what's best and just keep it moving. That's like what I try to do. But again, when you're in a position to trying to find work, then it's a different conversation, I guess. So all of it, I think you'd be silly to rule out anything in terms of
What about you, Tash?
I recognise that Instagram is really important, I think, because it's just the way that I use social media, I suppose. It's easy to look someone up and see like from their page kind of what their vibe is, and that could be just if they use it for like personal stuff and work stuff, that's fine. It can kind of look a little bit similar to a portfolio in a sense that if you've got lots of stills or like videos of your work, then maybe you'll have a certain aesthetic on your grid. and you can use like stories and like to put your BTS on and then have that in a highlight reel or something like that. I don't know, or your promo, like if you've got press and things, you can have like a little press highlight or something. And I like try to keep my website updated, but it is one of those things, like Sam's saying, like, you get to a point where you're just like, okay, I need to do this now, and spend some time putting up a new video. And I put up my videos, and I also put up stills from them too. I think that can be a really useful tip if you haven't got many videos, for example, like, if you do have only 2 videos, like we were saying, if you want to start like showing your work, I would do it that way, because again, people are used to seeing stills in that way, like because of social media. It's just a different way, like I suppose our brains now process. Whereas before it used to be only like the video clips, I would say would be on my website, but now I open it up a bit more and I have stills from those videos as well. But yeah.
And I think you can get creative, because even going back to what we were saying earlier about what work do you show and what do you not show, I think there's definitely a world where you can always take something from everything that you've created. So whether that means just specific clips or stills, or editing things together, re-editing them in your own way, or doing a director's cut, which is some better music, or there's always ways in which you can A, utilize social media, but B, get the best out of your work. And I think that's almost part of the hustle, isn't it? Getting creative and seeing what you can work with, you know, to get that first video, like Tash was saying, to do that first music video, whatever it is, you have to get creative, because it's a friend or it's someone else. And then to get this, like, I remember, I'm sure you'd say the same, but I remember thinking, or not thinking, being told where you need a bigger reel, because 1's not enough, 2's not enough, 3's not enough, 4, there's always need for more, there's always need to expand.
Especially if you're trying to find a certain direction.
Massively. So you have to, in that period, that was not the hardest, but for me, that, let's say the first 4 was the hardest, because each and every one, you've still not got much behind you, so you still have to have that same spirit to get the next one. It's not, and even now, nothing ever gets handed over to you. There's always things, they've not done much of this, or they've not done much of that.
Yes.
Always got something to say. So the thing that you haven't done is what they put.
There's always something missing, and I think that goes with heading towards where you want to be and heading towards the work that you want to do. That the fact that you're always going to be pushing out of your comfort zone, and you're always having to convince people to trust in you to do something extra, unless it is just doing the same thing on repeat, which, if that's what someone wants to do, great, but you will get pigeonholed. But yeah, there's always there is a hustle spirit in terms of how you get that next job and how you get that bigger job, because there's always a reason why someone wouldn't trust you. There's always a reason why, I don't, this person has it done now, or this person, so yeah.
Yeah, there's going to be a lot of times where you'll always be the underdog, I think, in that pitch process, for example, or getting to that pitch process. Like, and that is, I always think it is such a hustle, like being a filmmaker.
Yeah, I think
you need to have that energy to consistently push you forward.
Exactly, and I think, don't think that your creativity stops in your ideas. Your creativity is about how you get the next ideas made. It's how you manage to pay your bills, become a professional. Like, you have to be creative. Like, you have to be creative. Who you're emailing, whose doors you're knocking on, whatever it is, you really have to try and, and I think that's part of the challenge. I enjoy it.
Yeah, part of the fun and part of the challenge.
Exactly.
I love that thought. I think it's definitely true, especially. Well, in the early stages, it's like massively creative. You're like constantly trying to reinvent yourself. Like making your first reel, I mean, sometimes it's just about like maybe shooting a few extra bits, or like taking some stuff from behind the scenes video you might have done, or like as a DOP, something you've shot. Videographer, DOP, whatever you do in the beginning. Yeah, but it's massively creative. And then, so I really love that thought.
What did you do in terms of some of your early, from your first piece to the second to the third?
And the challenges, I think you've all just mentioned. I love how you've all just kind of gravitated towards my next question, which is just challenges you faced. And
I mean, this whole thing is a massive challenge, because it's about who you know. You usually start with no connections, and yeah, the whole thing is just a massive challenge, and you constantly try and invent, reinvent, put the puzzle together, figure out where your next job is coming from, what are you eating, where are you eating. Like, it's it's a massive hustle. So in the beginning, you sort of jump on any job you can find.
I think, I something I always say to like younger filmmakers is that even though when you start directing, for example, when I started directing music videos, I couldn't live off that money. I had to have another job. Like, that's just the reality of it. And I think that a lot of people, because of things like Instagram, where everything looks like you've got like some really prolific output and everything looks amazing, that is your life and you've made it. But like, you know, a few years ago, I was still doing another job because I couldn't just live off my fee that I was getting as a director. You know, I think that's such a truth that no one talks about.
So true. Yeah, everything looks great online. Like, everything looks easy. Everyone else looks like they've got the biggest set or the biggest kit, or they're working on, you know, with the biggest brand. Someone recently, in another conversation, a young filmmaker was asking, and he said he was pointing at I was at a screen and showing some of my work, and one of the people I worked with on one of my jobs is almost, let's say, I don't know, not a celebrity, but he's this person's super vocal on Instagram, and they've got a name for themselves. And so this young guy was asking me, he's like, you know, how did you get to the stage where you were working with such and such talent? And I said, you know what, don't let that fool you. The people who are in and amongst you now, the people you've graduated with, the people who are willing to run around and shoot little crappy films or whatever it is, the people who are keen and hungry to learn as much as you are, they're your peers. And it's crazy because I've been making films since I was probably about 19, and let's say the 10 people who are in my tight circles, the 10 people who are, you know, really pushing me and really in their own field being super successful at working in film and TV, like in big boy jobs, I reckon about 7 out of those 10 I knew when I was 19. And 7 out of those 10 for the last 10 years, we've all been going on about our different ways, not working together closely, tightly, but we've been persistently chipping away, so that every time we sit down, like me and Tash, we met how many years ago, and same thing, we're in a room and we're like, amazing to see what you're up to, keep at it, you know, good to, and you know, we still keep going. So I think people often can sit and think that they're constantly on the outside. You can sit and you can look at all of these people on Instagram and be like, oh, they're all working together, they're all going far, they're all on these really big projects. And so my advice to this one guy was just like, honestly, find your people now and stick close to them. And that will take you as far as you need to go. Yeah,
I don't think that's actually as valuable enough, and I'd love to, that's a great point you make for all students, but for young people as well, for anybody really, like I think you're always looking at the generation ahead, and you will never realise how the generation below look at you, you know? So like, I realised this recently, it's like, not to say like your peers, they're your peers, but they're also your competition. So when you're looking at something like, oh, they're doing, you know, but it's the generation below you that are going to be like, they're going to look at you and be like, whoa, like you're that guy. Where you're looking up and you're going, but Spike Lee's that guy, you know, or like Steve McQueen is that guy, and you're like, well, and they're looking, no, you are the guy. Like that piece of work you made, I watched 10 times over, but you made that and went, I'm here now, I'm gone, and you don't even realise that the people at uni are looking at you or whatever. So yeah, that's a great point. I think finding your tribe is so important, and I think especially with Instagram, that's maybe not lost, but I think people don't remember that you know, you're looking at the person on Instagram and you're trying to be in the circle of their friends, but like you said, it's 10 years deep. It's going together to the chicken shop after a set, after like a small budget video shoot, and going, wow, I'm tired, and I've got to do this again tomorrow. You know, that's invaluable moments that you need to build with your tribe. Massively. And God willing, that you'll get to those places, you know. So massively, like so many of my really close friends who are doing such amazing work, and people often be like, how do you know these people, blah blah blah, and it's so funny because it's like, you know, we've been in the trenches for so long that if you knew, and you know, we both look at each other, and I know the work that's gone into their success. They know the work that's gone into my success, and you know, there's a genuine the support and the kind of
there's such genuine pride in seeing each other that A, not giving up, and B, have continued to just keep plowing on. And so the success, we're like, you know what, it's deserved. There's no question, there's no doubt. And that's nice because, yeah, it's easy to look at everyone else and what they're achieving. It's easy to see what awards they're winning or festivals they're in or brands they're working with or platforms they're, but the reality of it is long and hard. You know what I mean?
I think the important thing we often forget is that it's a marathon, it's not a sprint. We always think like, oh, next year I'll be like doing well, but it's all about like, it's a marathon. So it takes a long time to start. For some people longer, for some people shorter, and that's okay because it's a career that you're going to sustain for like the rest of your life, hopefully. So if you reach your success at 23, remember you still need to sustain it for another 40, 50 years, hopefully. So maybe more. I don't know, maybe you'll change your career, that's also fine. But yeah, so it's kind of, I always keep reminding myself like, it's okay, you know, like I've still got so many years and I've got some success now, I'll probably have more, it might go down. It's kind of like a wave as well.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with what you're saying. It's just the incremental increases, that 1% each day. And just to touch back on it, like, how did you guys build some of your connections? Was it just you went to that party, you met that person, was it at uni?
Yeah.
How, like, can you name some of the ways you met? That's looking at me like in shock. But how? Yeah, how? I'd love to hear those stories.
I worked in retail for years. Like, not only that was, you know, people either do retail or the service industry or the hospitality, and retail was just my one. And the first job I ever got is such a joke story, and this was, I don't think I'd even picked up a camera. Like, when I think back to the audacity that I had, I laugh. And I was working in Size and Carnaby Street, and some guy came in and we got chatting. We maybe had some mutual friends, and he was like, yo, actually, I genuinely can't even think back to what I said or whatever. And he was like, I need a filmmaker. And I was like, yeah, I could do that for whatever reason. And it was literally I knew a friend of mine had a 7D, you know, a Canon 7D, and we were like, cool, let's do it. And it ended up being with Puma and MF Doom. So strange.
Wow.
And they paid us £250, I think, and we were gassed.
Yeah,
like, we were like, £250. No, not even MF Doom. We were like getting paid. Film stuff. So we were in this house in West London with MF Doom. Like, it was so surreal. Like,
did you have the mask on?
Yeah, the mask was letting us try it on. It was like, it was mad. We were just literally in this room. There was like 4 of us. It was, you know, and literally that was it. And the guy who we did it with, my friend of mine who I did it with, he's still working. He went and worked in advertising for years, but he's now not super, he's doing really well. He's like doing second unit on a lot of big TV shows. And again, we're all just still learning. And in retail, I worked with so many people who were just like, yeah, I'm into film a little bit, or people who studied here. And it was just, I kind of just gravitated, like, I hate the word networking because it's such a like smarmy, like, here's my card, what do you do, what can you do for me, all of this thing. But I always just gravitate towards the people I gravitate towards. It's never about film, let's chat film. It's like, let's just chat rubbish, and, you know, if we get on, we get on. You know, if we have a similar sense of humour, if we've got similar tastes. And yeah, it's always served me so well. Like, I can go to an industry party and I don't walk into the room thinking, man, I need to talk to everyone. But I kind of stand and I chill and I gravitate towards the people I get on with, or the people, you know, for whatever reason. It's often you'll be in the corner being like, oh, this is a bit stressful. And then someone else will say, yeah, I just thought it was just me. And then we'll start chatting, and then all of a sudden we're now peers, or we're now exchanging details. And so, yeah, I try not to put on too much emphasis on network, make sure you're meeting loads of people. It's just like, find your people, and that can be anything. The people who dress like you, listen to the same music as you, into the same art, or, you know, exhibitions as you. And before you know it, you'll start to see that you share a lot of common values, and those values translate to what happens on set and on work. You know, I have a very specific vibe and approach to how I want to work, and so my sets often have a very specific vibe and a feeling, and it's okay. I'm not saying that's the right way or that there's a wrong way, but I've known and I've worked with people who have very different ways of working, and that's okay. But I know that's not what I want. And so once you start to meet the DPs and the producers and the, you know, stylists and all these people on set who have those common values, then all of a sudden you start to see these are my people and these are who help me create the best work possible. And that just keeps going and keeps going and keeps going and keeps going. And yeah, it's still going so far. It's served me well. That's what I would say.
Well, yeah, I think I struggle with networking in the sense of like going to parties and like chatting to random people. So most of the people which are part of my network is someone I met naturally, not one of them at those parties, usually at a film set or at uni. So someone who might have been a runner or someone who might have been my course mate, and then I haven't spoken to them for 5 years. Next thing I know, they're hiring me or I'm hiring them. So, or you sort of become friends because you met somewhere and then hopefully you continue working together or someone recommends you. So I don't think I've ever met anyone at a party who like hired me. But that's because I guess I'm quite shy at those things. But yeah, I still get work and I still have a network.
Hey, it works.
Even though I'm not good at in a traditional networking sense, I guess. So yeah, it's okay. It's okay to be slightly more introverted.
Nice.
Massively, yeah.
I think also, like you said, about these kind of events or parties that happen maybe within, like, I guess if at uni, I don't know really, you might have like a party with other people. It's just, it's not about like selling yourself, I think. It's just about like getting to know people, you know, that's how you will be with each other in life. So like, I think that's half of like the job is how do you get along, you know, like what Sam was saying about, you know, creating this environment of people you want to work with. You get to work with your friends essentially, and that's what's really beautiful about the job that we do. I was just thinking about how I started to meet people, and actually have no idea.
It just happens, doesn't it?
Yeah,
Random, isn't it? I think the, like you said, the word network is worst. Like, I think it's just friends. Like everyone I've worked with, they're my friend. Like genuinely, if I can't, because a set's for me, anytime I've been on set, it's a stressful place. It's just stressful. Like sometimes you haven't got the time to really be like nice about what you want to say. Sometimes you know I need it changed. And if they're not your friends or they don't know you're coming from an honest place, if you can't go for a drink with them, then usually they're probably not going to be on your set, because it's like, it's going to be stressful, and I'm going to need to know that we trust each other to do this job.
I think to a certain extent, you know, that would probably apply to like your HODs, because those are the people as director that you need to like trust creatively and collaborate with and kind of work really well together. I have a story about the first kind of commissions job I did. So after that music video I did for my friend, I then won a music video, which was low budget, but I didn't know anyone. Like I didn't have a producer, I didn't have, you know, first AD, didn't know who could be those roles. So what I got put with some people, and I think the lesson I really learnt there was that I didn't want to work with like old school white men because they were a lot older than me, and I back then like looked really young, and I'm very short, and I think they just didn't respect me, and that was like such a hard shoot and such a quick lesson to learn, I think, from that day to like you said, to choose people you want to work with and have that say. I think it was a different situation because I didn't know anyone, and I was put with these people, but I really learned a lesson there of like, knew from then I wanted to make sure I could choose who I worked with, and you know, however that makes you feel comfortable, whether you need to meet them before you start working with them or have a phone conversation to see if they understand your idea and things like that. It was a really quick lesson to learn.
100%. I love that.
And I think, you know, like as Tash said, the whole process is about lessons, and there's some lessons that are unavoidable, and you know, I've had a lot of, I wouldn't even say costly lessons, but lessons where it's similar to you, where it's just been a nightmare for whatever reason. And I always used to find it quite hard early on trying to choose, because on one end you've got who even wants to work with me in terms of at whatever level I'm at, and then on the other scale you've got, okay, I've got two, let's just use DOPs for example. Got two DOPs, both their work looks quite good. What I'm trying to create doesn't fit in necessarily for either, so how do I pick? You can meet them, you can have a chat, and if they're keen, they're both keen, like how do I do it? But I think for me, through a lot of those lessons that I've learned the hard way, you start to realize the kind of people you want around, and there's no right or wrong answer. Some DOPs like to have a very serious set, like to have it run really proper. We like to have it really like this, we're doing a very serious job here, so everyone needs to stay in line. No one talks out of line, all of these things, and that's okay. That's not wrong or right. It's not for me. So it's like, I can't really have that. It's not that deep. I always say we're not saving lives here. As stressful as it gets, I'm like, come on guys, yes, there's a problem, but let's all just relax and we'll come up with a solution. And some people might find that stressful in themselves, or other people might be like, nah, you know what, I respect the fact that no one ever panics, no one ever shouts at people, and
can't have a shouty set.
Exactly, can't have a shouty set. And so it's, for me, okay, how can I bring the best out of the crew and also the cast, because that's what I'm here to do essentially, is make everyone do as good as possible, but then also what kind of characters bring the best out of me, because essentially if somebody's shouting, or if someone's stressing, or somebody's doing all of this stuff, that's not going to be conducive for me and my creative practice.
I'm going to create the right vibe on set.
Create the right vibe, but that vibe is personal, and like I said, with those lessons, the only way the only way I can sit here and talk confidently about what I like and what I don't like is because I've been on so many times. I've learned the hard lessons, and they're hard, and they're funny. And we still like, I met a friend yesterday, the same guy who did this first ever job with me, and we were joking because we did this. He did his first short film. We're talking in the last few years, so his first, let's say, proper short film. The DP that he chose terrorized us. Like, I was the AD, he was directing, and it was his first time. And this guy who's my friend of mine, he's really chill, really timid, and this DP was on an absolute mad one. Like, mad one. And I was AD, and first and the last time I'll ever AD.
Yeah, it's a hard job, that.
It's a hard job, and because it was a short film, it was never that deep. Everyone was there because we wanted to be there. It didn't need to be made harder than it needed to be made. But this person, it was 3 days, and it was
3 days of hell.
It was funny, like, it was funny. We all, like, it was funny. We had to laugh because it was, it was an experience.
Yeah, I can imagine.
An experience, and again, lesson learned.
Well, what film and project are you most proud of thus far? Have you made your proudest work yet thus far?
I've got one.
Yeah, go for it.
Hit me.
I think my favourite one is probably the Channel 4 series I did last year. It's a mini-series, under 10-minute episodes, 5 episodes. And it was extremely colourful because the director is very much like myself. She's also a very, very colourful person. She pitched for the project, she wrote the scripts, and she got a chance to do it. And yeah, it's teenage stories, basically really, really colourful, really engaging, and really, really fun. And I had to pick my whole team. So I brought a bunch of friends, or people I usually work with who have become friends.
Yeah. Amazing.
And yeah, I think despite it being really, really stressful and you never really know what's going to happen, and like, it wasn't maybe the smoothest process. I mean, what is ever really smooth? I think just because it was a long period of time, so we were able to really focus on doing the same thing and really streamline things. And the story was good, the visual world was good, actors were good. All the elements essentially came together. And yeah, it just feels like a really, really cool project.
Amazing.
I want to do more of those.
I would say so far Kindred, which was my kind of first short film, is a personal project, and I guess similar, to you. It was, friends came together, the idea was quite abstract, and everyone really believed in it, from the cast and the crew, and I was really proud of the outcome.
Nice. Well done. Yeah.
This is a hard question. But actually I just shot a music video for a really good friend of mine, and literally graded it yesterday. But what was really nice about doing that is that we worked together a few years ago her name is Lucinda Troy, and we did a sort of music film a few years ago when we connected because our parents are from the same place in Malaysia, her dad and my dad. And we loved that project, and we got on straight away, and we became really, really good friends. And going back to what we were sort of talking about earlier, Lucinda had said, like, you know, look at where we are now and imagine where we'll be in a few years' time. And it was really nice to like come back to doing a project now. Now she's signed to 4AD, and I'm signed to a production company that are great called Blink. And we made this like beautiful video that I love and means a lot to both of us. And that was just, it feels really meaningful to like kind of as a next chapter in our collaboration together.
Congratulations.
Thanks.
And I guess it means similar, but what's your biggest achievement? So, I mean, I guess it coincides with your proudest projects, but are they separate or are they all aligned?
My biggest achievement, I've just got my a feature film into development, which is still a long way to go. We were talking earlier that it's in, yeah.
I'll start the popcorn now.
So no, that is, the biggest achievement thus far, but it's also the biggest task ahead. So it's an idea I'm really passionate about. It's really personal, and I know what I want it to be, so the pressure is on for me to achieve that. But that's definitely the biggest achievement so far.
I think I'll talk about, not in terms of projects. I mean, I guess the series would be the biggest one in terms of projects. But I think just making it this far in the industry and having a nice life where I managed to combine leisure, like travel. I travel a lot, 44 countries so far.
Nice.
And a career in film, which so far seems to be working pretty well. So I think that's my biggest achievement.
Nice. I love that.
Amazing. This is a really hard question. In terms of like career achievement, I did an ad last year. It was like a UK TV ad. I think for me to work on something that had that much scale was like really great for me in terms of learning VFX, in-camera effects, shooting abroad, that kind of stuff. For me, it was like a really big learning experience, and also, I guess, in terms of like a career achievement, it was substantial, I suppose.
Nice. And I guess my last question, guys, is what would you say to your university selves? And also, to tie in with that, what would you say to them about going full-time into cinema? Because you've all successfully made that jump. I'm still looking to make that jump. So I'd love to hear your thoughts.
Just persevere, just keep going. Eventually you'll make it. But yeah, I mean, it's really tough out there.
Keep going. Keep going. Don't give up. Don't be afraid to take risks. And there's no rush. And I think, I do what you need to do. Don't be afraid to have to, work retail or shoot weddings or do whatever you need to do in terms of that's going to sustain you in that time. It will come.
If you really love it, if you really want to be working in film, just stick with it and do what you need to do.
There's a million reasons not to do it.
Yeah, exactly.
There is so many reasons. It looks and sounds glamorous, but the realities of it is long and hard, and you either let those reasons put you off it, or you just keep your head down and keep going, I think, for me.
Yeah.
It's not a sprint, it's a marathon.
Yes, that's a lovely way to end.
Remember that.
All right, thank you very much, guys. Thank you for your time.
Thank
Take
you.
care. This is LCC Value Talks. Thanks.